Good morning, everyone. Oh, is KB here? No.
Good morning. I'd like to call to order this public hearing. We're going to go into recess, hopefully for a short period. Hopefully, we'll be back. Thank you. All right, we are going to bring this meeting back, call this meeting back to order. Any remarks by my co-chair or the ranking members? Seeing none. We are going to, if you're following along, folks, we are beginning the meeting. We are going to, if you're following along, go to Roman numeral 2, nominations for review. We'll begin with Eileen Keys of Farmington. Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm, as the case may be, that the information you provide to this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God under penalty of perjury? You do. You may provide your testimony.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Co-Chair Senator Winfield and Representative Staffstrom, Vice Chair Senators Flexer and Gadker Wilcox, and Representative Fazzino, Ranking Members Senator Kissel and Representative Fishbein, and all distinguished members of the Judiciary Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. I am deeply honored to have been nominated by Governor Lamont to serve the state of Connecticut on the Board of Pardons and Paroles. My name is Eileen Keys, and I live in Farmington with my wonderful daughter, Haley, who is a first grader in our public school system. For the last 17 years, I have worked with the Institute for Municipal and Regional Policy, or IMRP. The IMRP is a nonpartisan, university-based research and policy institute focused on criminal justice issues. During that time, I worked on many impactful projects, most notably leading the state's Children with Incarcerated Parents initiative. This work aimed to understand the effects of parental incarceration on children and to use that knowledge to improve the quality of services provided to Connecticut's families. As part of that effort, I was invited to join, and I continue to serve on the Connecticut Fatherhood Council and co-chair its subcommittee, Domain 4, Men Involved in the Criminal Justice System, Supported in Being Responsible Fathers. While at IMRP, I also worked closely with the Judicial Branch's Commission on Racial and Ethnic Disparity in the Criminal Justice System under the leadership of the Honorable Luby Harper Jr. Additionally, I supported the Institute's International Justice Exchange, which connects the Connecticut Department of Correction with international partners to exchange best practices for improving correctional environments and well-being of staff. Prior to working with IMRP, I provided direct care to various populations, including adjudicated youth, families involved with child welfare, and individuals diagnosed with mental and/or developmental diagnoses. With this nomination, I am excited about the prospect of applying my years of experience analyzing criminal justice issues and working directly with vulnerable populations to help implement responsible, fair. I am eager to learn from others and strive to improve the quality of my decision-making. I am committed to using these principles to support the state's pursuit of justice, safety, and well-being. On a personal note, I want to share the profound honor and humbling pride I feel when I consider what having this role would mean for my young daughter. It's important to me that she sees firsthand the value of public service, integrity, and the impact we can have on individuals, our community, and our state. Thank you again for considering me for this opportunity. I am deeply honored and excited by the possibility of contributing to our state's pursuit of justice. I look forward to your questions and any discussion you have. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there comments or questions from members of the committee? Representative Fishbein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning.
Morning.
Congratulations on your nomination.
Thank you.
It's a weird question, but we have a statutory requirement as far as boards and commissions. So I just wanted to ask you what gender and race you identify with.
Female and Caucasian.
Okay, thank you. The Children with Incarcerated Parents group, how long have you been involved with that?
Since 2007.
Okay, and that's with Andrew Clark, Central, and
Yes.
yeah. In your backup, is there any? I got the backup a couple days ago. I didn't see any reference to that particular group when in the question number 10. Please list your employment history for at least the last 20 years. Include employer name, position, and years of employment. You listed the Institute for Municipal and Regional Policy at UConn. You listed the Institute for Municipal and Regional Policy at Central. You listed being an adjunct professor. I don't see any reference anywhere in your backup to this particular group. Is there a reason for that?
There's no reason. It was the Children with Incarcerated Parents Initiative is a project of the Institute for Municipal and Regional Policy. Sorry if that wasn't clear. So it's not a separate entity. It's just a project within the Institute.
Understood. But just in comparison, I went to your LinkedIn page. And the entry with regard to your employment
Mhm.
says nothing about Yukon, Central, Institute for Municipal Regional Policy. It says in glowing terms, Children with Incarcerated Parents Initiative. So when I saw the two, I was like, well, why did she not reference it at all in the official document that came before the legislature, yet out in the public, it's out there? Is there a reason for
No,
that?
I'm wondering, there was an accidental creation of a second LinkedIn page. I'm wondering if the one you saw may have been that one with a Gmail account that has no photo. I'm not sure, but I will admit to not maintaining my LinkedIn page very well. And the marketing coordinator for the Institute was trying to encourage us all to improve our LinkedIn pages. And so if she's watching this, she's probably laughing. But there's no reason. I think technically my employer is the Institute, or was the Institute for Municipal and Regional Policy. The project I was most working on and that most people would have known me for was Children with Incarcerated Parents. So for what I would consider more of a legal document, if you will, a questionnaire going to the General Assembly, I wanted to make sure I was being accurate in terms of who my legal employer was. The primary project I worked on, the topic, that maybe I would want maybe in LinkedIn or more of a social marketing site where I would want people to know the type of work I did. The name Institute for Municipal and Regional Policy is quite broad. And so I wanted people to know what topic I consider myself an expert in and that I really worked on for more of the social marketing type of platform. But for a formal legal document that I'm submitting to the legislature indicating my employer, the employer is the Institute for Municipal and Regional Policy. I hope that answers the clarification, provides the clarification.
No, I thank you for that. I mean, would you characterize yourself as an advocate in the area of incarcerated individuals?
I would not. The Institute is not an advocacy organization. It's a nonpartisan organization. We work with all parties on all sides of the aisle to look at criminal justice issues. And based on the information we gather from the people who are directly involved on all sides, I work very closely with correctional staff, and the Institute, the International Justice Exchange Project in particular, is really focused on staff well-being. I'm very much supportive of the correctional staff and the Department of Correction, and work closely with them in improving the environment for everybody that is impacted by that environment. But I also support the people the families on the outside of the correctional staff, their families, but also the families of those who are incarcerated.
What about victims?
Absolutely victims.
What's your experience with working with victims of, the individuals that are incarcerated?
Right. Many victims, many people who are incarcerated are also victims. The research has demonstrated that very high majority that have experienced trauma and have been victims of crimes themselves. I also, while I was in graduate school, worked with Dr. Mario Gabri at the University of New Haven in his Crime Victim Study Center, and I assisted him with writing books and articles and conducting research into crime victims.
So just people get incarcerated because they're convicted of
Right.
committing a crime, right? And and I understand a lot of your work has been dealing with children, the effect on children whose parents are incarcerated.
Mhm.
And I recognize
Mhm.
that's an issue, okay? But what I'm looking at is now you're asking to be put into the place of a neutral,
Mhm.
right? And being able to decide whether or not the rights of the victim of the crime that led to the incarceration have any value.
Oh, I think
So
that's,
how, yeah, please.
sorry. don't mean to interrupt. I think has significant value. I think the totality of circumstances needs to be considered when reviewing anybody's application for pardon or parole. That absolutely includes the impact of a crime on victims, if there's a person victim, the victim of the state, the community. That's all information that needs to be considered and factored in. And then the potential for victimization in the future. I do not want to be part of a decision that leads to victimization in the future. I take that very seriously. I do have a young daughter. I think about her welfare all the time as a parent. As a female, I think about my safety and welfare. Not to say that obviously males are not victimized, they obviously are, but it's something that has been at the forefront of my thoughts. So I do not consider myself leaning toward being an advocate or in favor more so of releasing people. I really take this very seriously. I want to make sure that public safety is number one and people's well-being and behavior change. So I want to look at the totality of circumstances for the actual originating offense. I want to see their behavior since their offense, since their incarceration. I would love to hear from everybody involved that could testify, if you will, or submit statements on their behavior since then. I want to hear the person's understanding of the offense's impact on victims, the community. I want to hear that they understand that there has been a significant impact and their plans for the future and their ties to the community.
In addition to the work that you've talked about, you've also testified up here at the
Yes.
Capitol. You've testified before this committee, you testified before the Public Health Committee. Those were on behalf of people that were incarcerated.
The children.
Well, your in particular, the telephone call, you were talking, the telephone call legislation 972, I think in 2021. You were talking about connection and I recognize that connection, but I'm just trying to gauge in my mind the ability to be neutral. So I wanted to ask you, have you watched any of the proceedings of the Board of Pardons and Paroles?
Yes.
Okay. And why did you watch them?
In preparation and thought about this position, if I really would be interested in it, if I really think I would do a good job, I wanted to see the format for the hearings, the types of information that comes out, the types of questions that the board asks, and how the committee, how the board votes based on the responses that are given and how the applicant performs during the hearing.
And I've done that myself in the past when Governor Malloy put me on the Board of Firearms Permit Examiners. I watched the hearings and I used it as a tool. And what the tool that I used that for was I would gauge how I would rule if I was on that body. And then, you see the conclusion and, you learn. Did you watch any of those in particular say, well, I would have decided differently?
It's a great question. It's hard to say because I don't have the file. I don't have all the information that the board reviews in advance of the hearing. And I understand it's a substantial amount of information and research that goes into to prepare the board members for the hearing and to make the best decision possible. So there are times based on the hearing where I'm trying to determine if I feel based on how somebody presented, if they appeared remorseful, if they appeared to really understand the impact of the offense, if they really seemed to demonstrate positive contributions to the community if they're asking for a pardon since their release. I have tried to kind of test my perception of how they performed during the hearing, but not having the information contained in the file, I didn't feel able to say if I would agree or disagree with the decision made.
So you never got that gut feeling, I would have done something different or.
Not really, no.
Okay. I'm just.
That's a good question. That's a great question, yeah.
Well, I thank you for that. I can understand it's difficult for me to perceive someone who's been involved with advocacy on behalf of the incarcerated and their families, and now being put in the place of determining whether or not a judgment of a court, essentially, 'cause a sentence is a judgment of the court, is going to be modified without coming to the table with a certain perception. And that's where my head is at. Is there anything you want to mention? I mean, I think you understand where I'm going. Is there
I-
anything else you want to say that may neutralize my fears?
I appreciate that. I appreciate the opportunity to respond as well. I would push back a little bit on, and not in an argumentative way, but just on the word advocacy. And I understand there's definitions for advocacy, and then there's more of just, a common language use of the word. But I would not consider the work that I had done as advocacy for children with incarcerated parents. I think it's a topic of an experience that I researched significantly for many years. And I got to know families and people who provide direct care to families in the community. And so I learned a lot about the experiences of families. And so I think when legislation was proposed that would have a profound impact on those children, I looked at it as taking what I had learned from my work and from working with families and just communicating how my knowledge applies to what's being proposed, if that makes sense. And so I wouldn't liken it to advocacy. It was more bringing just information that I had gathered over the years to the topic that was being considered in the bill. And so I think that's, there was a second part to yours that I did want to share a response to. And I
Well,
can't
if you
remember.
wanted to, I think you understand where I'm coming from, and I'm just giving you an opportunity to, avail my fears that, my fear is that you'll never vote against an application for a pardon or an application for parole. And that shouldn't be the process. So that's my fear. Because I go back to your LinkedIn page and, I see civil rights and stuff like that, and I'm all about civil rights, but I see nothing about victims, right? I don't see that balance that you would ask for in a neutral. As a lawyer, I represent both plaintiffs and defendants. I represent individuals that are victims of domestic violence and those that are accused of perpetrating domestic violence. I'm on both sides, right? So you can sort of perceive that I could be a neutral, and I'm just trying to look for that nugget in you that avails my fear. So.
I don't know if this would complicate things in any way or if this would be helpful. I will say the automatic erasure legislation is something that had concerned me in regard to, 'cause I like the idea of having an opportunity for review. This is what I was going to talk about before, was the sentences the judge imposes. We also have, thanks to this body and others, that there is the law affords opportunity for reconsideration. And I think it's extraordinarily important. So that is built into legislation, that is built into our process, that is built into many sentences, is the opportunity to review and check in. I think if we can check in on how somebody is doing in regard to parole, see if this is the opportune time for release. If they have demonstrated by those who are engaging with them regularly in the correctional environment, if they are demonstrating that they have changed, that they recognize the impact of their offenses, that now they may be the best time for them to return to the community and have success. It's a great time to check in, review that, because if you leave them in past that peak time, then they could become further institutionalized. They could lose important social connections in the community that would help with their successful return. And then that's counterproductive because then they're lingering, they're remaining in the system, and now they may be less able to reconnect in a healthy and safe way for the community. If we don't afford that time, that opportunity to check in with a board of experts who have been trained or are going to look at this seriously, then we lose that opportunity to let them out under community supervision. We also know that community supervision has much greater success in terms of a reduction in reoffending than end of sentence. So if we want to give somebody an opportunity under the supervision of a parole officer who can put guidelines in place, programming in place, who will have a watchful eye as opposed to end of sentence where there's nobody that's really providing this watchful eye. And then that parole officer has the opportunity to really scrutinize, see how they're doing, modify the terms of parole if necessary, if it seems like that may be helpful and needed, or seek to revoke the parole. because this is not working and everything, as opposed to an end of sentence. I think the opportunity for review is extraordinarily important, and I would want to make sure it's the right time. I can guarantee I am not going to be approving everybody that is released. I was asked a question in advance of this. If I was completely on the line, if I was really stuck, unsure, I looked at everything in the file. We had our hearing and I still was on the line. Would I be more likely to lean toward release or continued incarceration? And my answer was continued incarceration. If I was really on the line, I don't want the responsibility of feeling like I let somebody out, was part of the process that let somebody out when they were not ready.
I appreciate that. That was really good.
I impressed. with
Nice
that.
job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
I
Chairman.
appreciate that response. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Senator Kissel.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chairman Staffstrom. Good morning.
Morning.
Congratulations. It's Ms. Keys.
Yes, thank
Okay,
you.
and you're not an attorney.
No,
Okay, not that it matters. I just want to call you counselor if you are. I view an appointment to the Board of Pardons and Paroles, at least from a job security position, as somewhat of a plum, right? State has wonderful benefits. You're going to be there for a certain term of years, and it's a full-time appointment. And so when you look at job security and a good position, it's one of the good jobs that the state has, in my view. At the same time, though, it's a really hard job. It's not something where you're going to get a lot of public visibility. It's just one of those things that works behind the scenes unless it doesn't work.
Mm.
And that is probably, I wouldn't necessarily go so far as to say the nightmare of the members, but certainly something that you don't want to be on the front page of the Hartford Courant, because that means you made a mistake. And so I don't have any problems with your aspirational background as far as wanting to help children of incarcerated individuals. These individuals, 90% of them come back out into society, and I hope they're reformed. That's why, at least in Connecticut, we call it corrections. We want people to be corrected in their behavior patterns and become law-abiding, productive, tax-paying citizens with healthy, happy families and nice lives. So I get it. But part of my questioning is, why do you want to do this job? And I understand that you wanted to help the children of incarcerated individuals and you have other experiences touching upon this area. But why this job?
I thank you for the question. I've been interested in it for a long time. I don't think it would have been the right time earlier. I think now is the right time, as I have been engaged with learning about the criminal justice system, its impact on community, victims, families. I now want to be part of the justice system. I want to take what I have learned and use it to support, hopefully, the decisions that are best for the community and the state.
And I appreciate that. I view the board first of all, a pardon, probably a lot less pressure if someone's record is somewhat erased. But the paroles, and I appreciated your answer to my good friend and colleague, Representative Fishbein, the House ranking member. It's a way better position to have somebody released on parole with guidelines surrounding them and a parole officer, as opposed to decades ago where, or even today, depending on the circumstances, the bus drops them off in their hometown and says, good luck, see ya. And there's no support services, there's no halfway houses, there's no drug treatment programs, there's none of the safety net programs that help people reintegrate. And if you're uprooted from your community, even for what we would consider a short sentence, like a year, that's a year. That's a disconnect from jobs. That's a disconnect from family and friends and what has transpired in wherever you grew up or wherever you were living. And that can be traumatic to try to reintegrate into that neighborhood, that society where you were. Now, individuals with 10, 15 years because they committed very serious crimes, that's a whole nother situation. And a lot of times we fail to remember that the family members don't want anything to do with these people once they're incarcerated. It's hard to go to prison in Connecticut.
Mm.
I tell this to people all the time. I once upon a time was a special public defender for a number of years, had plenty of experience in working at least in the lower end, not the Part A so much. But you get a lot of bites at the apple in Connecticut.
Mm.
We have a lot of diversionary programs, but even at that, what you get arrested for is usually knocked down in a plea agreement. 90% of the cases are plea bargained out. There may be an ability, as I did many times, argue within a range for incarceration. But even there, it's lesser than what the original crimes were charged. That being said, the new role that you're going to assume, and I want to put a little bit of the fear of God into you. I've seen it evolve.
Mm.
I've been lucky enough to be voted by my constituents to serve here now 33 years as their state senator. I remember back in the day where we had volunteer boards for pardons and paroles, just people regular right out of the blue. We had an incident over a decade ago now in the town of Cheshire, the horrific Pettit triple homicide, and that shook this system to its core. We were shocked. One of the things that I will take credit for it is at that time, we didn't even classify robbery or burglary as a violent offense, because you would be judged on what your crimes were that you were charged for and doing time with. And burglary, which means you're in a house
Mm.
and usually in the nighttime, and it may be occupied. I said, how could that not be violent?
Mm.
You may not, the public may, the family may not know you're in their house, but when they catch that burglar or they know they were burglarized, they're going to be traumatized because your safe space is your home. And we have that notion of a person's home is their castle. And we argue here in the legislature about the castle doctrine and do you have an ability to defend yourself in your home? But that was one change that happened out of the Cheshire triple homicide was we now look at burglary clearly as a violent offense, but a whole slew of other things happened too. And one of the things that happened is we're working on the criminal justice information system, which is taking an inordinately long period of time to get up and running. That's a whole nother can of worms. But part of the problem was Holmes and Komisarjevsky, and Komisarjevsky was the one that had been adjudged a burglar, and he tortured little animals. He had a history that it was like clearly textbook, this guy's going to do something bad the next time he's released. And the way it turned out was that the information, because the sentencing judge said, I see this guy, Komisarjevsky, he is going to be dangerous once he's released. And I want this on the record. And he went out of his way to put this information on the record. The name of the judge escapes me, but he actually used to work for Senate Republicans back in the day when I actually started. Later became a judge, was a sentencing judge, saw in this person's history of criminal behavior an escalation, and it had all the indicia. You know, we hear this story, like if you torture little animals and stuff like that, it's not a big step to like ending up hurting people. That information was back in the day where we packed everything in like these bankers boxes and it got stored in a warehouse. And lo and behold, the Board of Pardons and Paroles didn't have access to that information, never had that transcript from the sentencing judge, and made a decision without adequate information. There were calls for the head of the chair of Board of Pardons and Paroles. He was my former colleague, Bob Farr, state representative from West Hartford. Great guy, really good guy. And he ended up campaigning. I think he ran for attorney general, was not successful. When Jody Rell ran for governor, Governor Rell was successful. And one of the things he got sort of as a, you know, consolation prize is you can be on the Board of Pardons Pros, you can be chair. And people wanted his head. Well, it turns out that the decision on releasing to parole Komisarjevsky was made by the previous Board of Pardons and Paroles, not under Bob Farr. And he spent weeks trying to clarify that. That's how visceral the reaction of the public was. So the reason I'm telling you this is there's a lot of security, job security. It's going to be good for you. You know, it's pretty much set hours, stuff like that. But you're like an insurer of people's behavior. And the only time people are really going to notice out in the greater public is if you make a mistake. If you do the job right, we're never really going to know that much about it. The people that you put on parole are going to follow the rules. And hopefully, as you describe it, if they bump up against the rules, the parole officer will be able to reel them in and it'll be reconfigured. But those times where something blows up really bad, they go looking right at the Board of Pardons and Paroles, and they will hold you guys accountable. So you're assuming a job now of being sort of a risk assessor of human behavior with a coterie of people that haven't shown a great track record for good socially acceptable behavior. And so I'm all about second chance society. These people are going to be out in society one way or another, as you indicated. But have you actually taken a step back and sort of said, wow, if I mess up on this job, not only is there potential for more victimization, and I appreciate the fact that you said you have a young daughter, you wouldn't want that to happen to her, yourself, your friends, your loved ones, your neighbors, anything like that. I get that. Not only would the spotlight of the public be grilled right onto you guys, which we haven't had to happen in a long time. We've been really lucky, knock on wood. I applaud them. This is a tough job. And it's when it works great, it works great. This is sort of like what weighs on judges. You know, when we've had candidates to be judges, they said, I want the weight of that black robe to weigh on me because and it's more than just like, you know, oh, the gravitas of life and death. We don't have death sentence anymore and things like that, but is someone going to go away for a long period of time? Have you thought about the huge amount of responsibility that you're going to have and how difficult your job's going to be?
I appreciate that. I have, and I have been warned by others as well, that it is a very difficult job. There is a lot of work, but there is a significant level of responsibility that is put on the board members. It is similar in one sense. It reminds me of DCF, where it's very difficult, and you're not always going to get it right, and it's devastating if an outcome that you thought was going to happen is not what happened. I will say what I fall on is I am very much a process-oriented person, and I feel if I can follow the processes that others have put in place, and I abide by that process, and the decision is made, and it goes awry, then looking at the processes that were followed, the amount of information. I appreciate your example with Cheshire, that they didn't have the information, and maybe it was the systems we had at the time, and we needed to modify our systems. And I'm not saying that incorrect decisions would always be based on improper processes. That's not certainly, these are human beings. Humans we can't always predict human behavior, right? I think that's very important. But I think as long as we have processes in place, rules in place that people agree on, they're satisfied with the way they are now, and that is what I follow, then I'm hoping that will help me if there's a decision that is made that turns out not to go as I hoped and expected. And then, of course, always looking at how things are done in other states and other countries. I really believe in constantly learning, always trying to improve and do better. Certainly it would not be on me to be changing the policies and processes, but I do believe in Connecticut's ability, this body's ability, the board's ability, the leadership to always maintain knowledge of what's going on in other places too, to see if we can tweak things to improve them before hopefully something horrific happens.
Well, thank you. I can see you clearly giving this some thought. I think your analogy to Department of Children's Family is spot on. We've had matters here on the Judiciary Committee in the last few years where we've had errors of judgment at the Department of Children and Families where the state had to pay huge amounts, millions of dollars. But above and beyond the cost to the taxpayers as far as judgments go, the harm that has been done to children, and you're all about children. I mean, it's really bad. So when people make mistakes, they can be like really huge mistakes, and above and beyond the spotlight that might be shown on you and what decisions you've made, just your conscience. I mean, you're not going to want to make a mistake because you're going to feel the gravity of that decision bouncing back in your own face, and you'll have to live with that. And so I commend you. You're making a brave step. It's very much similar to being a judge. You're actually going to have to second guess, as Representative Fishbein said, something that somebody put a lot of time and effort into thinking about what's an appropriate sentence. And if it's not a judge, it's the jury, which is rare and few and far between, but it does happen in Connecticut still too, thank heavens. So people can learn how that system works also. I'll just leave you with this. I'm happy for you. I think you're going to do a great job. I'm a believer in the glass is half full, and I'm going to send you with positive vibes. I know you're up for the job. You've given it a lot of thought, but certainly as you put your feet in the water and you start trying to figure it all out, do not hesitate to ask staff. Do not hesitate to ask other members of the board, and do not hesitate to ask the chair, because everybody wants you to succeed. And I want you to see, and everybody in the legislature wants you to succeed. I want to continue to live in a state where, wow, they're making right decisions. And yeah, you're going to grant some paroles and you're going to grant some pardons. That's why we have it. But but if you trust your gut, if something feels amiss, trust your gut, because so many people out there's lives and safety are in your hands. So thank you, Mr. Chair, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Callahan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you for being here. Just a couple questions. I was reading through your questionnaire overnight, and you were an adjunct professor.
Mhm.
Can you
Yes.
tell me about some of the classes you've taught? Just to name a couple.
It's only one.
Only one, all right.
It was ideology and violence, although I taught it over several semesters, but it was always the same course, ideology and violence.
And did that have an impact on you in teaching students that?
It was very interesting. I enjoyed teaching very much. I liked posing controversial questions to them, just to allow them to consider other ways of thinking and to engage in debate and to challenge the notions that we inherently have. And so I liked having the opportunity to do that. It was a wonderful experience. I wouldn't say that through my studies in my undergraduate degree, my graduate degree, I learned a lot about deviant behavior, as some of the courses were, and psychology and sociology and things. So I think I applied some of that to the course. But
Well, I appreciate the answer. And have you ever sat through a trial in one of our superior courts and listened to proceedings?
no.
I was just curious if you've seen it and seen the many players that are involved in coming to that conclusion, or whether it's be a jury trial or a ruling from the bench on a conviction. The many different players that are involved in that. You know, you've got victims advocates, defense attorneys, state's attorneys, sometimes probation behind the scenes doing reports. And I was just curious if you had ever sat through that process.
I was trying to think just to make sure my answer is accurate. When I was a foster care social worker in Detroit, I participated in trials and hearings as I was the foster care worker. So I would testify and I would submit court reports. But that's certainly a different court than what you're asking about. I have listened in on civil trials and then family court. I've had my own thing. So, but in terms of superior courts, I don't think I have sat through and watched a trial, no.
Thank you, because it is important to know, as some of my good ranking members even alluded to, is before you get to that point, there's plea bargaining, there's the original charge, there's sometimes a plea bargain down to whatever the case will continue through the court as, and there's many hands involved, and that's where you really see the impact of a crime on a family, a neighborhood, a community. So I would encourage you to take the time to do that. But thank you for your answers. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I like that. Thank you for the suggestion.
Further questions or comments from the committee? Further questions or comments? If not, congratulations on your nomination.
Thank
Thanks for being
you.
with us this morning.
Thank you, everyone.
Alex Sarkoff. If you could raise your right hand, do swear or affirm as the case may be, the information provided to this committee be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God or under penalty of perjury. Great. Have a seat. Whenever you're ready, we'll take your opening statement. Hey, Alex. that microphone in front of you. Come on, man.
Good on now.
There you go.
Thank you. Senator Winfield, Representative Staffstrom, Senator Kissel, Representative Fishbein, and members of the Judiciary Committee. It is an honor and privilege to appear before you today. I want to express my gratitude to Governor Lamont and his staff for their confidence in nominating me to the Board of Pardons and Paroles. I also want to express my appreciation to each member of the committee for your consideration. I'm humbled and honored by this nomination. I was born in Russia and moved to Connecticut at the age of 15 as a refugee with my family. I would not be here today without the immense sacrifice of my parents. They gave up their careers as a doctor and a teacher to bring me and my sister to the United States in search of a better life. They instilled in us the values of hard work, resilience, and the importance of giving back. It is because of them that I had the chance to pursue an education and build a career in public service. Throughout my career, I've had the privilege of serving in various roles at the Connecticut General Assembly and the Judicial Branch Court Support Services Division. For over 9 years, I have served as the director of the Connecticut Sentencing Commission. I hold a bachelor's degree from the University of Connecticut, a master's degree from Trinity College, and a JD from the University of Connecticut School of Law. In addition to my work in criminal justice, I'm an adjunct professor at the University of Connecticut School of Law, where I teach a course on pretrial justice, and the University of Connecticut School of Public Policy, where I teach a course focused on policy and legislation. These teaching experiences have allowed me to share my knowledge and passion for policy and criminal justice with the next generation of leaders. I'm a resident of Hartford and a proud father of 2 teenagers in high school. I want to take a moment to thank my children, Rebecca and Isaac, for their unwavering love and support. They keep me grounded, inspire me every day, and remind me of the purpose behind the work I do. The Board of Pardons and Paroles plays a critical role in ensuring public safety while fostering rehabilitation. If appointed, I look forward to embracing this challenge with hard work, diligence, and humility. It will be an honor to bring my experience and commitment to justice to the board. I'm dedicated to ensuring that our system is fair, transparent, and focused on both public safety and rehabilitation. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions to committee, Representative Fishbein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Morning, Alex. How are
Morning.
you? Alex, I noticed on your questionnaire that, well, let me ask you this. Did anybody review your questionnaire before it was submitted to us?
I believe I have sent it to the governor's office before I send it here.
And was it revised after?
No.
Okay. So why are certain portions typed and certain portions are handwritten?
I believe it was because the committee administrator, Kirsten, asked me to fill out all the questions. So some of the questions were not applicable and I left them blank. And so I ended up putting an A there.
Except for question 11.
And I ended up adding Commission on Racial Disparity because I just didn't think of it. It's been a commission that I've been appointed to by Representative Ritter. And it escaped my mind at the time that I filled out the application first.
Okay, so I'm just trying to get through the progression here. You completed the questionnaire, you attempted to submit it, and then it was brought to your attention that it should be modified or other things should go on it.
Kirsten asked me to fill out all the questions and put NA if necessary, and so that's what I did. And then in reviewing it again, I realized there's a board that I should list, Commission on Racial and Ethnic Disparity in the criminal justice system.
Okay, and I don't want to, I'm not going to drill down, but obviously at the time that those changes were made, you were at some different position because you didn't type those. So you didn't go back to the computer, but I'll go away from that. The, your background in this area, you know, because you do ask about your employment for the last 20 years. The first thing that you list is, that you were a legislative aide in this building, 2007 through 2011. Then you were the clerk of this committee, 2011 through 2012. And then you were a court planner at the judicial branch, support services. So did you work out of judicial headquarters or were you at a courtroom or courthouse?
I was at the headquarters for the Judicial Branch Court Support Services Division, which at the time was in Wethersfield, now is in Glastonbury. I was also in the field a lot, visiting programs and services that provide treatment to people on probation and pretrial. So about half of my time probably would be in the field.
Okay, you just meant, because I'm trying to figure out where your background comes from. So you just mentioned something about probation. So in 2013 through 2015, in conjunction with judicial branch, you had something to do with individuals that were on probation? Is that, can you just tell me what that was?
Sure. I was in programs and services unit at CSSD. As you probably know, a lot of services and treatment that we provide to clients on probation and pretrial actually provided by nonprofit, well, most of them nonprofit contracted providers. And so I was in charge of overseeing some of those contracts for alternative to the community contract, for example, ABHS contract, which is high level of care for mental health and substance abuse. And a lot of this work was to make sure that the nonprofits providing these services and treatment are abiding by their contract with judicial branch. So some of it was almost like compliance type of work.
Okay, and I sorry, I forgot to ask you the uncomfortable initial question that is a little unusual today. What race and gender do you identify with?
I don't think it's uncomfortable. I'm white and I'm male.
Okay, that's, well, we just don't usually ask that in this building. And there's a reason, don't need to get there now. All right, so that was your involvement with judicial, people on probation. And then the next entry I have is UConn found you to be appropriate to teach as an adjunct professor. What did you teach? So you list the spring of 2023, spring of 2024, spring of 2025. What did you teach at UConn?
This is a class that I teach together with Attorney Dacus of the Senate Republican Caucus, who's somewhere here today. She's a pleasure to teach with, and we've been doing it for 3 years. It's a class that's designed to expose students to the legislative process. The big assignment for the class is to come up with an idea for a bill, draft it into statutory language. We work with students to get that done. And then we do, what we're doing right now is a mock Senate debate. So students bring out their bill, everyone serves as a senator, they ask questions, propose amendments, and it's a lot of fun.
Okay. And I take it that because the next entry says fall of 2023 and fall of 2024, once again at UConn, it's the same class.
Different class.
Okay, what's that class?
So that one is at the UConn School of Law, and it's focused on pretrial justice. Even though it's a law school class, it's definitely more of a policy-oriented class. We'll look at what bail system looks like in Connecticut and other jurisdictions. More of a seminar.
Okay. And then the next entry, I get, I read them the way they were listed, but they are out of order. From the judicial branch where you're working CSSD and individuals probation from time to time, you became the executive director for the Connecticut Sentencing Commission, right? And you've been there since 2015. And, what is the role of the Sentencing Commission?
Well, Sentencing Commission is a statutory permanent body. It's actually a criminal justice agency by statute. It has 23 statutory members who come from very different places in the justice system. We have as members, for example, Chief State Attorney, Chief Public Defender, State Victim Advocate, several commissioners. Each caucus of the legislature has appointees, and the governor as well. Governor has one appointment too. The goal is to look at various areas of law and policy and practice and make policy recommendations to this body. We'll also make recommendations to the Rules Committee of the Superior Court, produce various reports on different topics over time.
And, I'm on the website for the commission, and I'm looking at the initiatives that the commission has championed legislatively. in your experience since 2015, has the Sentencing Commission ever championed legislation on behalf of victims of crimes?
We did have a bill early on victim notification, around 2016 and 17, but issues around victims, sort of on the policy level come up all the time on really anything that we work on. Part of that is that we have state victim advocate on the commission, so those views are often expressed. Back when we worked on sex offender registry issues a few years ago, we also had very heavy representation from the Connecticut Coalition Against Sexual Violence, formerly CONSEX. They were chairing one of our subcommittees, and so a lot of that went into our proposals that were brought here to the legislature.
Okay, so 2016 is the last time that the Sentencing Commission, under your executive director role, has taken up any legislation on behalf of victims. Is that?
Well, the proposals around sex offender registry we made for a number of years. So I think it started in 2016 and 17. I can't remember the last year we proposed it, maybe 2019 even. And then we took a break at some point.
Okay, I'm looking at last year or this year, actually. One of the initiatives was an act concerning the use of police chokeholds. So that was a provision to prohibit or to reduce the use of certain tactics by police officers.
It's actually to allow it in defense of third parties. It was a proposal that brought to us from Judge Devlin, the Inspector General, former chair of the Sentencing Commission. And it's a statutory inconsistency that I believe Judge Devlin testified to this committee on. And so we took a vote on that proposal and passed it on to the Judiciary Committee.
And the votes before the Sentencing Commission, are they unanimous? Is there a requirement for unanimity, or is it majority?
That's a good question. Our model is consensus based. Now, that doesn't mean that everyone has to support everything that we propose, but that's certainly what we strive to. And most of the recommendations we brought up to this body, I would say, are consensus based. Not all, because we deal with some very difficult issues, but I think that's what partly gives us credibility, is that we're able to get all these folks with very different views, right? The chief state attorney and the chief public defender, if they agree on something, along with advocates and others, it's probably a good idea. And so we certainly do our best to come up with consensus.
Can I just come back to the sex assault? I'm recollecting now, the legislation that I believe you were involved with had to do with the notification of victims of sex abuse. Is that fair?
I believe so. It was so long ago. It's right around the time that I joined commission first. May have
Okay.
been our first session here.
But I think the last time we took it up was just like 2 or 3 years ago. It ran in the House and it failed. Am I talking about the same legislation?
It might be different, Representative.
Okay, that's fair. What is your experience with working with victims of crime?
Well, not a lot of direct experience other than sort of on the policy level, considering the interests of victims whenever we bring something forward to the legislature. I do think victim input is very important in the Board of Pardons and Paroles process. As you know, victims have constitutional and statutory rights here in Connecticut to be notified of a hearing and to participate in the hearing by providing a statement. And I think those statements are very powerful. I think they should be acknowledged, valued, and respected throughout the process.
What is your experience with dealing with those and responding to those victim statements? Because I looked at your background and it doesn't appear that you would have been involved in those in the past.
I think you're right. Certainly on the policy level, these issues come up. I've no direct experience other than that with victims.
Have you watched any of the proceedings of the Board of Pardons and Paroles?
I watched many.
Okay, and I asked the question of the other nominee here today. I'll ask you a similar question. Did you ever have an instance that you said, you know, in your gut, you would have done something differently?
That is a good question. I was just thinking back, sitting there. There's no one decision that comes to mind where would have disagreed with the board, but there are times on the board where there's a majority decision and dissent. All panels are three-member panels, and so there are times when there's dissent, and I think that's healthy. It's part of the process, and can make the majority decision better. But no case comes to mind where disagreed with the majority decision.
How am I to? I'm looking for the right word. Silence is not me. um, how am I to support your nomination on a? How am I to determine that you are an appropriate neutral? As with the other nominee, you know, it's a sort of the same situation. You know, I think you're a little bit different. But you know, certainly the role that you would be taking on here is something you've never done before. You've never had anything to do with before. I mean, your experience has been in this building. And a little bit of work with judicial years ago. And now we put you in an adjudicative role, asking you to look at both sides.
Mhm.
How would you like to tell me some experience that you've had in the past that would avail my concern?
Well, thank you for the question. You know, my job with the Sentencing Commission was to execute the wishes of the Sentencing Commission. This, of course, would be totally different. I think, you know, I acknowledge that there will be a learning curve. I think this definitely will be the toughest job I've ever had. I'm going to do my best to follow the statutes, regulations, policies of the board, the training that I will receive, which will be extensive. I already have some experience working with the board chair, executive directors, and staff on various initiatives. And I think coming in, I'll already be somewhat familiar with some of the systems and processes in place. But without a doubt, there will be a learning curve. And I do think I'm up for the challenge, and I'm excited about it. I'm going to go in and work very hard every day.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Kissel.
Thank you very much, Chairman Staffstrom. Alex, congratulations. Governor Lamont gets a lot of props from me for making you one of his nominees. Had the pleasure of working with you when you were clerk of the committee. I can vouch to my colleagues today that you were an awesome clerk of this committee. And as much as it's a Democratic appointment to be the clerk when the Democrats run the show, which they do for many, many years, not every single cycle, but most, but you were very fair and even-handed. Also, I recall the creation of the Sentencing Commission. It was something that was brought to our attention that was enacted in both Republican and democratically controlled state legislatures, in particular to try to tackle some of the more nettlesome issues that did not lend themselves to some sort of practical analysis. Usually were made the punching bag of various political parties based on the nature of their issues. And so as in your role on in working with the Sentencing Commission, you were given the probably unenviable position of having to come and champion their results to us as a committee year in and year out, when it really wasn't anything that you had dreamed up out of whole cloth, that this was the decision that they tackled. And as you had indicated, for example, with the chokehold initiative, that was something brought to the Sentencing Commission's attention by Judge Devlin. Where do all the ideas for the Sentencing Commission come from? Because they do come from a variety of sources.
Well, thank you, Senator Kissel. I do remember one year, I believe it was 2017, when you were the co-chair this committee, so it does happen. But uh, commission work come from different sources. Sometimes it's this legislature that tells the commission that we need to do something. Sometimes it's a mandate to conduct a study, produce a report, produce recommendations. That was the case, for example, with the sex offender registry. We didn't pick to work on that necessarily. It was legislation that mandated that we produce a report. And because of that, we've had recommendations for several years in a row to this body. Last year, the legislature passed a bill that mandates that the commission study the experience of people with disabilities in the justice system, specifically intellectual and developmental disabilities. And this is a study that we're in the process of conducting right now. It's due January 1st. We probably will have the commission will have some recommendations for this body. Other times we receive individual requests from legislators, sometimes from chairs, sometimes from other legislators. And then there are times when commission members themselves propose ideas. So I would say those are the three main sources. There are times also when outside groups may make requests to us as well. So for example, Hate Crimes Advisory Council asked us to work on hate crimes. I know this committee is considering that legislation right now, but we're in the process of producing a report. We also have a similar request on trafficking from Trafficking in I forget what the group was called now, Trafficking in Person Council. So sometimes that happens too.
Yeah, so I think we're lucky to have you as a nominee to the Board of Pardons Paroles. You have vast experience, and actually, you know, as much as these are controversial issues that you've had to champion here in the legislature, this is at our behest. And you show that there's a variety of ways that issues get before the Sentencing Commission, and that commission itself was a creature of ourselves, our desire to get a neutral group of people together. It'd be great if everything could be voted unanimously, but come on, we know as members of this committee to put the state's attorneys and the public defenders together and get them to agree on anything is sometimes a miracle. And I appreciate the fact that you've actually done a really excellent job there. I have to chuckle a little bit. I mean, thank you for giving a shout out to Attorney Dykes as her role as a professor that you share working together as a team. I have the utmost respect for Attorney Dykes. She's fabulous. We are so darn lucky to have her. And it's probably just a matter of time till we lose her to something else in state service or somewhere else. And I still get in trouble because apparently before she ended up working for Senate Republicans, she invited me to talk to her college course, and I turned it down. And she definitely lets me not forget that I accepted the last two times I was invited by Con O'Leary and Carl Schissel, who have esteemed histories in this building previously. In fact, Con O'Leary was my predecessor. So, but maybe if you're still teaching in the future, maybe I'll have to accept one of those invitations. Alex,
would love to invite you, Senator.
Thank you. You heard what I said about the Cheshire triple homicides and how that should put the fear of God in you. It's not just that. It's every little decision. You are like the actuary of human behavior. And there's my understanding is that there's a whole algorithmic, computerized, database-driven kind of thing that the Department of Corrections runs on new inmates that is like a risk assessment tool that they use for placement and behavior and all that kind of stuff. I'm not an expert in it, but I know that there's lots of stuff out there like that. You will be utilizing, I'm sure, similar kind of assessments when matters get brought before you. But I think you're a perfect candidate. Nothing against the predecessor that you have, because I think she's going to do well too. You guys have the mindset that it's a very serious job. It's a very hard job. We want people to succeed. We want to believe in people. I don't think any of us in this building just think the world's going to end tomorrow and it's all doom and gloom. We wouldn't be here trying to fight for a better future. We wouldn't be legislators. We wouldn't be staff members if we gave up on things. But at the same time, you have to look at a person's background and do a real honest to God assessment of what kind of risk does this person pose if I commute their sentence in some way, shape, or form and release them out into society sooner rather than later. And this person has already been adjudged that this is a fitting sentence based upon the crime that they're charged with and convicted of. And it's a decision that was made by a judge or a jury that they put a lot of time and effort into, and it wasn't easy for them. And as Representative Callahan nicely referred to what I had said, this is after charges at a certain level, then plea negotiations, then plea bargains, and then sometimes I had a lot of times when I was a special public defender, a range that I could argue in between for a sentence. And so by the time the person is convicted and sentenced, it's gone through a lot of permutations. That's A. And B, I would say, it's just really hard to go to prison in Connecticut because at the outset, there's a lot of bites at the apple. There's diversionary programs, there's lesser sentences for first offenses. There's all sorts of things. I mean, by the time you're doing some hard time, you really have a bad track record, a bad rap sheet, and a bad history of antisocial behavior. And those are a lot of the folks that are going to come before you, and you're going to have to make a judgment call. But I do believe in second chance society. I do believe in redemption. So God bless your soul, Alex. I wish you the very best, and I'm happy to support you as you move forward through the process.
Well, thank you so
Thank
much,
you,
Senator.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Further questions or comments from Committee Representative Callahan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Alex, good to see you. Good morning. I apologize if I didn't see you on the way in.
Good morning.
I've spoken to you many times in your over the years and as in your role on the Sentencing Commission. Just a couple of questions to clear up in my mind. And I agree with Senator Kissel. You are a very good candidate.
Thank you.
Why do you want to be on this board?
Good question. You know, for a long time, it's been difficult to leave Sentencing Commission just because the job is so interesting and fascinating in many ways. Every year you could be working on a different issue. I wanted a real challenge. I think the board plays such an important role in the criminal justice system when it comes to public safety and rehabilitation. I think the board members do a tremendous job. It's not an easy job, but one that has to be done under our Connecticut statutes. And I'd love to continue my public service in this way.
Thank you. Thank you for the answer. When it comes to, and I do applaud all your accomplishments since you've been here. I mean, in your academic and your work-related accomplishments. When you worked for judicial branch, you worked through CSSD, and it sounds like you worked with clients initiating programs or enabling programs. Is that what the job was?
So I was in Jewelry Vaza's shop at the time, and Barbara Lanza, who you probably know well, Brian Hill.
Yeah.
Program and Services Unit was in charge of contracts such as the one with the AIC, ABHS, some residential programs, and it was really making sure that the nonprofits that provide services to probation clients and pretrial clients are abiding by the contract. So it was a lot of work in the field, meeting with the programs, meeting with probation officers, meeting with clients to make sure that we get good outcomes from those programs to reduce recidivism.
And I am familiar with a lot of those programs, as you know. So in working with those programs, you're working with the probation clients, you're working with probation officers. And as a good ranking member in the House, Representative Fishbein alluded to, what experience do you have working with the other side, working with any experience working with the victims?
No, not a lot of experience working with victims at CSSD. I would say some policy experience working with victims groups, the Sentencing Commission.
And when it comes to the previous candidate who was up, I asked the question, have you spent any time in an actual courtroom observing a trial?
And I don't think I've ever sat through the whole trial. I've had some cases in law school in different clinics. I've sat through many, many arraignments, hundreds of arraignments. I've never sat through the whole trial, I don't think.
And I mean, some of the trials do go on, but my point is, if I just want you to understand all the different players that you've been on the Sentencing Commission, you know how the courts work, you've worked for judicial. There's a lot of players that go into a conviction. So you've seen one side of it on quite a deep level.
Mm-hmm.
There is another side, victims advocates. There's all the people who work in the state's attorney's offices, investigators. there's quite a bit of information that goes into a conviction and a plea bargain. So when it comes to making decisions on the Board of Pardons and Parole, the person on paper may have done everything right, but I hope you can consider that there was a victim on many of these cases. There was a victim and there's community safety involved. So they may be doing everything right on paper, but there is still another side to the story. And I just want to make sure you're aware of that.
Absolutely, Representative. In terms of parole, inmates have to be suitable for parole, right? And part of that is certainly rehabilitation and what they have done in prison and whether there have been any disciplinary tickets. But part of it is also the circumstances and nature of the offense itself and the impact on the victim and the community. So I think it all goes into the decision making.
Thank you. And I do realize that when it's better than dropping someone off in the corner, that there should be setting up some services, setting up some decent living situation, whether it be halfway house or family. So there's a lot to weigh in on. It's a big job and a big decision. So I appreciate the opportunity for the questions, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.
Further questions or comments? Representative Godfrey online?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Alex. It's good to see you as always. For the edification of my colleagues, Alex was my intern some 20 odd years ago, and I can attest. I have more comments than questions. I can attest that he is very hardworking, that he dealt with all of the challenges that internship bring, dealing with constituents, dealing with tracking, dealing with participating and attending committee meetings. I've been on the Judiciary Committee even back then. So he followed those. He is resilient. He was very much able to adjust to all of the challenges that got thrown at him. He certainly is a person of very high integrity. I will vote for him on that. And boy, is he really smart. That's one of the things I learned when he was in the internship program here. And I've been following his career all these years. Happy to see him advancing. Saw him go to law school, the alma mater of many of us, including me at UConn. And I cannot think of anybody more perfectly suited to be able to deal with all of the requirements and the laws and regulations of the Board of Pardons and Paroles, and be able to do the adjudication on a case-by-case basis as each inmate comes before the board pleading his or her case. So I just want to thank him for applying, thank him for his service all these years. I'm delighted to see that he is up for consideration for this very important role. And I'm looking forward to supporting him, and I hope everybody else does too. Alex, congratulations, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative. Further questions or comments? Further questions or comments? If not, Alex, congrats on the nomination.
Thank
Thanks
you very
for
much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, we will turn to the public. We have one person sign up to testify. That's Ken Barone.
Good morning, representatives, staffs from Senator Kissel, Representative Fishbein, and distinguished members of the Judiciary Committee. I'm here today to express my strong support for both the nominees, both Aileen Keyes and Alex Sarkoff. I've been fortunate enough to work with both of these individuals for well over a decade. And during my time, although we worked on different issues, during my time working with them, they have demonstrated an unwavering commitment to public service and to the state of Connecticut and to the consistent ongoing improvement of our criminal justice system. They have extensive experience and deep subject matter expertise, as you heard today. They're thoughtful individuals. And they've taken a nonpartisan approach to understanding the complexities of our criminal justice system, which I think make them well qualified for this important role. I am more than confident that their service on the board will be marked by integrity, by fairness, and by a steadfast dedication to public safety. in my experience working with Aileen, she has consistently demonstrated extremely strong critical thinking skills, a strong work ethic, and a calm and empathetic demeanor. These qualities, coupled with her deep knowledge and expertise here in Connecticut, make her an outstanding choice for this appointment. Likewise, I have seen firsthand Alex's deep understanding of the criminal justice landscape, his ability to work across diverse perspectives, and his, as you've heard on numerous occasions now, his impressive work ethic. These qualities will serve him well and will make both of these individuals highly valuable additions to the board. I know firsthand that both Aileen and Alex have always approached their work with professionalism, with respect, and with a spirit of collaboration. Their long-standing, informed, and authentic dedication to improving Connecticut to public service through nonpartisan policy work is going to be a real asset to the state of Connecticut. So just really proud of the both of them. I know there's a number of colleagues from the Institute here today and watching on CTN that are very proud of the both of them. And we would strongly encourage your vote of support on both of their nominations. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Senator Kissel?
Thank you very much, Chairman Stafford. Just real quickly, what was the nature of your day-to-day interaction with both of these candidates?
So we all obviously worked for the Institute. We were each responsible for a different set of policy areas. My work obviously focuses on things related to policing, and theirs were the Sentencing Commission and children of incarcerated parents. Aileen and I shared an office physically, worked in the same space for about 8 years. And so, you know, we would hear each other on the phone and in meetings and engaging. And Alex and I, for a long time, worked directly next to each other, right? I don't know if you know this, but sometimes in a work environment, there are people that are loud, and then there are people that are sort of thoughtful and maybe more deliberative. I'm the loud one. They were always the ones that were, I think, much more thoughtful, much more deliberative. And but I had you know, to work with somebody for two individuals for 40 hours a week in that close of a space, you get to know them well. And the one thing I can say about both of them is they're just good people. They're good people. They work hard. They have a lot of integrity. And that's what I took from my experience working with both of them.
Thank you. I very much appreciate that. And I think it's good for the public to see that we appreciate when people out in the public come and testify and speak on behalf or against people, because that's the only way that we're going to learn here in the legislature. Thank you, Chairman Stafford.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? Seeing none, thanks for being with us, Ken. I will declare our public hearing closed. I will convene our committee meeting, and we're going to stand in recess.
Good afternoon, everybody. We are going to reconvene this meeting. We will be taking up these two nominations on Friday with the rest of our business. We will be entertaining a number of referred bills in addition to these two nominations. So thanks for your patience, everyone, today. This meeting is now adjourned, and we will reconvene Friday. Thank you.